What's up, y'all? Welcome into another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope everybody has had a solid week. Got a lot to dive into today. We've got hoops to talk about. We've got football to talk about. If you're still rocking with us on the football side, you are a sicko. Seek help, but we're right there with you. If you're tuning in live, give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Say what's up in the Toyota chat. Always good to see the DNVR Rams community rocking live with us. I certainly appreciate it. I know how long this season has been for everybody, but thankfully, mercifully, we're within a week of this regular season coming to a conclusion. This has been a year like no other. We'll talk about the injuries later. We'll talk about Darius Curry making his first career start for CSU. Talk about a tough spot behind an injury-ridden offensive line, missing a ton of skill guys in Boise, a place that's historically a house of horrors for the Rams. Certainly not the most ideal scenario for a young quarterback to make his first career start. But I do think it's time to give him the keys based on what we've seen. So we'll get into that, what I'm kind of hoping to see from him on Saturday. I'll talk about the DU Hoops game tonight. I'm excited to be back in Moby. I've been in Denver a lot lately on the Avalanche side of things. Another late night last night. Talking about that team is a lot of fun, though. If you are into hockey, check out the DNVR Avalanche podcast. They do a great job. I'm on all the pre- and post-game shows for home games. I'll be on a little bit more once football ends, at least throughout the regular season, and some of their midweek shows as well. So a lot going on, a lot to talk about. I wanted to start with some thoughts on the Mountain West, or excuse me, the Pac-12. Going to have to get used to doing that. Let's talk about the Pac-12 media deal, perception, the weird bitterness and resentment that it's gotten so personal between both of these leagues. And I understand it from a fan base standpoint, from a media member standpoint. It's odd to me how personal some of the takes have gotten with all of this, and just kind of beating a dead horse. I'm going to try not to do that. Again, I understand, like, if you're just a diehard fan of a school that was left behind in all of this, I more than get the resentment. The reality is all of these schools have been left behind by the bigger leagues, and that's a whole different conversation. But it has been kind of exhausting, and I am hoping that at least once we get through football, we can maybe let it be for a little bit until we get some type of resolution, some type of settlement on the current, situation between the Mountain West and the Pac-12 regarding the poaching penalties and the exit fees. We're really not going to know. If you missed it, that the trial was set for 2027, which is not going to be a situation that works out well for the Mountain West, which has promised a ton of money that they have to deliver to UNLV and to Air Force, which leads me to believe we will get that settlement at some point, which I think is where most of us have anticipated this would end up going. At some point. You have to fight it out for months and months and months and make it some dramatic thing. But I'm hoping we can get a little bit of resolution in all of this. I've said from the beginning, I didn't think a reverse merger would happen. I do think that it could have been a fun scenario had Oregon State and Washington State been open to it. But for months, if you listen to the show, I told you that I had heard behind the scenes that, the top Mountain West schools, the top brands in the league were being courted by the Pac-12. Oregon State specifically really wanted to rebuild the league. They had no interest in taking the San Jose States and the Nevadas of the world. I am going to miss some of the programs that CSU has long been affiliated with. I mean, I think we get why the schools that were picked were and why the schools that weren't funding facilities, TV market value, all the things that we've talked about repeatedly. I think it's fair to say, if you are a critic of the scenario, that the payoff hasn't maybe been quite as drastic as promised, or it hasn't totally played out the way that the Pac-12 would have hoped. Obviously, they wanted Memphis. They kind of whiffed on that. We'll see what happens down the line. I think that's another thing that kind of gets lost in all of this, is this isn't just a 2026 play. This is a long-term decision. There's a lot of shuffling that is still going to happen down the line. If you can establish a league and make it look appealing enough, there's always the possibility of more attractive and intriguing brands, joining the conversation at some point. I've been open about Texas State being a logical move based on the realistic options that were on the table for the Pac-12, but also a move that does very little to move the needle. It just wasn't the PR win that swaying Memphis away from the American would have been. I do think that adding Gonzaga on the basketball side is really, really intriguing. I do think that the basketball value in this is something that's often overlooked. I do think that this is going to be one of the stronger leagues in that sport, and I think there's going to be TV value in that. That said, I just kind of wanted to go through a quick summary there. We do know now, although we don't know the figures, that the media deal will consist of CBS, a little bit of CBS Sports Network as well, and then the CW and USA. Now, the CW and USA are not historically the brands that we associate with big time sports, although I do think some of that gets totally blown out of perception. The viewership for college football on the CW has been solid. I've enjoyed the production value of it as well. They've done like pre and post game shows. They've really committed to it, which is something that some of the bigger networks who are just trying to stack as many games as they can, the live broadcast rights, I get it, they're worth a lot, but they don't really give you any pre-game, post-game commentary. The commentary you do get is just generic, vague national commentary, because your league is not a priority to any of these networks. And I think that is something that is kind of a strong selling point for the Pac-12 being associated with, USA and the CW, and that element is that while you get your championship games on a brand like CBS, both the football and basketball championships, like the Mountain West right now, will be on CBS. You get all of your tier 2, your tier 3 type games, instead of being delegated to, the FS2s of the world, or in a lot of instances, the Mountain West Network. Now all of your games are going to be available via, linear TV. You're going to be on cable. You're going to be easily accessible, which is a big win for the conference. You don't want people to have to go out of their way to watch your product as you're trying to establish yourself and kind of rebuild up that reputation again. And accessibility and being, readily available in all major markets, that's a big win. I mean, the Pac-12 network not being, available was a big part of their downfall in the end. So I think that this is going to be a partnership that works out pretty well. It'll be interesting to see what those figures look like in the end. I've said that hopefully it can be, 10 million plus. I know when it all started, people were hoping for like 15 million or something like that. I don't know how realistic that is based on everything that's come out. I don't know. I'm not a media rights expert. But I do think that from a visibility standpoint, from an accessibility standpoint for the fans, and you don't need like an advanced cable package or anything like that. Well, I actually enjoy the games on CBS Sports Network. I think they do a pretty good job of committing to the league and having broadcasters that are knowledgeable and have some familiarity. A lot of the time, I have Fubo at the moment, which I really like. That's not an ad, but I do. You get CBS Sports Network as just part of their basic deal. But when I had Comcast for years and years, it was like the second tier sports package. Like, not only did I have to get the sports upgrade, I had to get the second upgrade on top of that to even get CBS Sports Network. And they're still going to be a part of the picture. They're going to have a maximum of 10 football games plus a maximum of 17 basketball games. But the CW is going to have 13 football games plus 35 men's basketball games. The men's Mountain West tournament through the semis. And then USA will have 22 football games, 50 hoops games, a little bit of women's coverage as well. It's a good deal. You know, I saw one writer in the conference. I got to be good. I saw one writer in the conference who really dedicated, claims to write 5 pieces a day. I mean, the commitment of this guy. But he made a joke, you know, about how being on USA is comparable to the Mountain West Network, or, you know, it's not a better situation. And to me, that's absurd. That's insane. Like, what are we even talking about? Being on cable versus being on an app. It's free. That's the most redeeming quality. And I've talked about that a lot. Beggars can't be choosers based on the options available. I'm very thankful for the Mountain West Network and being able to watch a lot of these games around the league that when I was a kid were not. They were not, you know, you had to listen on the radio, you had to read box scores, all that type of stuff. It's great that they're accessible, but being on cable is very clearly a substantial, you know, jump in exposure and accessibility and just all of that. And while being free is great, the quality of the network broadcast is what you pay for. So I think all of this has gotten odd. I'm going to miss being associated with the New Mexicos of the world. It's going to be weird to not be in the same league as Wyoming, Air Force, UNLV, although we'll see what happens with them if they don't get all that money that they were promised. At the end of the day, it's clear what side you would rather be on. Whether it's a Power 5 conference or not is largely irrelevant, because at the moment, the top 5, you know, highest rated conference champions are guaranteed a spot in the playoff. So a lot of the time, the Pac-12 is very much going to be in that conversation, certainly more consistently so than a league that is now going to have UTEP and Northern Illinois as the backfill options. And their options were limited too. I get the Mountain West didn't have a lot of great moves. They did what they had to do to remain afloat, and I tip my cap to Gloria for that in that regard. But I don't know. I guess it's just surprising to me how many little passive columns or tweets get sent, you know, my way when it comes to this kind of stuff from fans of places like New Mexico and Nevada and Wyoming, who I understand are certainly bitter in an ecosystem that is not fair and was really designed to leave all of us behind, but especially those types of schools. I get it. I don't like any of this, but these things aren't equal. And if you're mocking the Pac-12 for the media valuation that they're going to come away with, what do you think that means for the Mountain West, who lost all of its top brands? Like, I guess I just don't understand the lack of self-awareness in that scenario. If you want to be bitter and just root against the Pac-12 because of that I understand. But let's be real in all of this, and let's not be disingenuous when we are comparing the two leagues moving forward. I think the Mountain West from a basketball conference perspective is still pretty intriguing because Nevada can compete in that realm. New Mexico is New Mexico. I especially am going to miss New Mexico hoops. Wyoming looks a little more competitive right now, this year at least. We'll see if that's sustainable or not. Grand Canyon was obviously a great move on their part. I would say that's the best thing that both of these conferences have done since all of this has transpired, is adding really high-value basketball programs to Pac-12 and Gonzaga, who is the best available target, the Mountain West in GCU. I still think if you're the Pac-12 and you can add St. Mary's for a partial share, you should do so. I wouldn't give them a full share like Gonzaga. But that's where I'm at with all of this. I think the media deal is a win from an exposure standpoint. Obviously, we'll have to see how all of this plays out. With the dollars and the bottom line of it all, I do think that as of right now, it hasn't been the big PR win that we envisioned when all of this started. I also don't think that this is a failure by any means, and that the long-term outlook is still intriguing. It's still exciting. You very clearly would rather be on the Pac-12 side of things. I think anybody arguing otherwise is jaded or just trolling, which, I that's the internet. It is what it is. I get it. You do you. But that's where I'm at with all that. I meant to talk about this on Monday. I think I teased that even on last Friday's show, kind of forgot to get to it when we've got football and hoops going at the same time. We've got a lot of content to get into, but I appreciate everybody rocking live with us in the Toyota chat. Again, if you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up, keep it polite in there. I certainly love the back and forth we've got going at the moment. Let me shout out a couple of partners, and we will keep this rolling. All right, hey, Colorado, we've got the holidays coming up. Stop by your local Dick's Sporting Goods for the hottest apparel and footwear from top brands like Nike, Adidas Originals, Hoka, DNVR, and more. Plus, you can score the latest equipment for baseball, football, soccer, any sport. They've got it all. I love Dick's Sporting Goods. I can easily kill, a good hour just wandering aimlessly. You spend a good 15 minutes looking at the camping gear. Do I need any of it? No. Do I want to look at it? Absolutely. Snowshoes? Why not? I'm here. I love Dick's Sporting Goods. You love Dick's Sporting Goods. They've got all the best footwear around. Check it out. If you, I guess I should say, can find a lower price, they will match it with their best price guarantee. Get your gear fast with free curbside pickup at your nearest store or easy shipping from Dicks.com. Every season starts at Dick's. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota's built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails, whether you are hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma. Check out the Land Cruiser. They've got 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. Toyota also offers more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from so that you can take command on the road or the trails. I go out to the Western Slope quite a bit. Got family out there. I love it. Toyota's perfect for that kind of thing, but they're also perfect for cruising around downtown. The DNVR bar in the heart of Cap Hill. Parking can be tricky. Toyota, they've got all kinds of great options. Toyota's a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. Aaron says, this year I am finally ready to wake up on Christmas morning to a giant bow on a new Toyota. Me too. I am a company man, Toyota. We can make this work. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I don't think I'm high enough on the totem pole to qualify for that, although a guy can dream. Let's get into it, I suppose. Almost 20 minutes into the show is probably a good time to set the scene ahead for Saturday's matchup with Boise State. We will also be talking hoops. If you have any questions, comments, etc., keep them coming in the Toyota chat. If I don't get to them right away, we can come back at the end. I see someone's got comment and Tim Skipper speculation. We can get to that later. Let's talk DC, though. Darius Curry, redshirt freshman, getting his first opportunity. First career start. We've obviously seen him a little bit in relief scenarios over the last couple of weeks. I think he's, all things considered, done a pretty good job. 44 of 61 on the year, 72% completion percentage is actually the highest on the team of any of the quarterbacks we've seen. He's thrown for 447 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, which he certainly needs to cut down on, averaging 10.2 yards per completion, which is intriguing. It's not just all check downs or dump offs or stuff like that, although we'll see what the we'll see what the vibe is on Saturday. The injuries are really adding up for CSU. It's rough. I'll talk about that again in a sec. But it's been a mixed bag from Darius Curry. I've been honest with my assessment of him from the start. I think he is somebody who is appealing. I think he has a lot of raw tools that if they were to come together, he could be a very successful Division I quarterback. Athletically, he can move around. He's got the ability to extend the play. I love that. I've loved the confidence that he's displayed in spite of being thrown into the fire again between the offensive line, missing multiple starters, between missing multiple of your top intended receivers, and now Jalen Dupree's gone, and we'll see what happens with the tight end position this weekend. Like, this has just not been a good spot in so many ways, really any way that you look at it. Your head coach got fired. We're on the third offensive play caller of the year. 2-8, seemingly completely hopeless. There's just not a lot to talk yourself into other than maybe the fact that Boise State is reeling themselves. They're not a team that's coming in hot. They have their own injuries to deal with at quarterback. Maddox Madsen, again, will be out this week. That makes things at least interesting for CSU, as the Boise offense has been atrocious the last couple of weeks without him out there. Only scored 7 points in back-to-back games. The offensive production has just not been there. So maybe a young guy like Darius Curry could go in there. I say this in a positive way, but like young enough, maybe ignorant enough, again, in a good way to like not even fully comprehend how much of a shit show, excuse my language, it in fact is, and just be excited about the opportunity ahead of him. I think a California kid has probably dreamed of playing on that Boise blue turf at some point, and it is an exciting opportunity for him. So regardless of all the struggles that the teams have had, regardless of some of the doubts I may have about him being ready or being thrown into an opportune scenario, I do think that that's how it goes sometimes. That's the way the cookie crumbles, and you've got to try and create something out of nothing and make the most of a bad situation, which objectively, for a redshirt freshman making his first career start, this is a bad situation. The roster is depleted. The team has no momentum. The staff is a mess. And you just happen to go to a place where CSU has never won. The series history is very lopsided. Boise's won 12 of 13 meetings all time. They've been especially dominant on the blue. They've won the last 3 trips there by 4+ scores. It's not a place that the Rams have had any success. I would have wished that Darius would have been given the opportunity to start against New Mexico. Certainly got plenty of playing time, so it's not like he didn't get to dip his toes into the water, but I just think that would have been a little bit fair to him. I also understand them not wanting to completely abandon Jackson Brousseau. I think Brousseau deserves a ton of respect for what he's done for this team, and in spite of a brutal spot. I mean, it's not his fault that this offense is bad. He certainly has his own limitations as a quarterback, but it's not on him. I mean, it just isn't. It's been brutal, and he's taken a beating, and he's got very few targets out there that have done a good job of giving him any type of help. And there are not a lot of quarterbacks around the country that would have succeeded in this spot, just being real. As far as Darius and what I want to see from him on Saturday, I just want to see a guy who shows a little bit of growth in terms of decision making. I think his confidence is a good thing. The fact that he's been willing to throw in the middle of the field, something that we haven't seen from really Brousseau or BFN at any point this year. I love that. If you don't have any tight ends out there, maybe you won't have that option this week. But I do like that he's not scared to throw in the middle of the field, because that's how you strike fear into the heart of a defense. But he's got to cut back on those turnovers and some of the erraticism that I've talked about that we've seen in practice scenarios that we've seen in scrimmages over the last couple of years. They've played out that way. He does some things well. He's made some tight throws. He's put some balls in tight windows that I don't think Brousseau would have even attempted, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing, right? He's fearless. You like that. He's confident in himself. You like that. He's also occasionally reckless, which was an issue with Braden Fowler-Nicolosi early on in his career. It's a tough balance of wanting to rein it in, but also wanting to lean into that playmaking ability, that option to extend the play, extend with his legs and then, take some risks, because he has, again, made some plays. He's moved the ball a little bit by throwing some balls that I just don't think Brousseau would have been willing to even try in the first place. And he's gotten away with a couple of them. He's also been burned on a few of them. But in a scenario like this, in your first career start, in a hostile road setting, this is not the type of place that you're going to be able to get away with, multiple interceptions. And, he's now had multiple interceptions and multiple appearances. So we got to see him cut back on that and rein it in just a little bit. If he's able to do that, if he's able to get some time in the pocket, hopefully, knock on wood, we'll see what that offensive line scenario is looking like. I do like that he's been able to get some of the other receivers in the mix more so than what we had seen in the first 9 games. I guess that's what we're at, week 11 now. He's gotten guys like Levon Brown in the mix. I feel like he's gotten Tommy Maher a little bit more back into the equation than what we had seen. That receiver group is beaten up. Let's go ahead and just talk about the injury situation right now. I posted it on Twitter. We've got it here for you, courtesy of our super producer, Yaya. I'll go through it very briefly for those on the audio only side. Some of the new ones that stick out: Rocky Beers is questionable this weekend. If he can't play, that puts you in a brutal spot, especially because number 2 tight end at this point would have been number 3 tight end coming in. Carlos Anaya also questionable, as is Ryan McConnell, who's out for the year. So, I mean, you might be down 4 tight ends. You're going to be out multiple starters on the offensive line. At receiver now, you're missing Petey Tucker, remains out. Jordan Ross is still out this weekend. It is just a bad, brutal spot. I mean, it's a big part of the story. As critical as I can be of the staff this year, maybe, not delivering, of this team as a whole, just not meeting the expectations that were set in the preseason. It would be tough for anybody to sustain success based on what has happened to CSU, particularly in the trenches. I mean, the injuries are starting to add up everywhere at this point, but they lost like 5 key guys in the trenches in the first 2 weeks before they even really had a chance to get the ball rolling. And it's really only been downhill from there. And I just want to be realistic about that. It's not an excuse. It doesn't make up for everything or anything like that. But being fair to these guys, it just really is a brutal spot. I mean, I've never seen an injury report quite like that. And if you go through the amount of guys that were on the 2 deep for week 1 versus Washington that are now out of the equation, it's just absurd. And even some of the guys you hope that would pop. I mean, let's see here. Going through guys that were on the initial 2 deep, I don't think Antwi was for Washington. He might have been for week 2. Rocky Beers certainly was. Brousseau was QB2 at that point. Chandler Brown, Dupree, Evans, Foster, Hector would have been at that point. Morley. You've lost Noland. You've lost Dagan Myers. You've lost Jackson Warren, Mukendi. I mean, it's just been unreal. And it's been a big part of the reason why the Rams have been as rough as they have been, is they just don't have the depth or the experience at this point. They are so young all over the field, especially in the trenches, and now at quarterback as well. And at the skill guys and the veterans that you hope to be able to depend on have either not delivered to the expectation that we had again in the preseason, or they're just not in the equation at all because they're injured or not on the team anymore. It's been a season and from hell in so many different ways. Let's take a quick breather real quick. We'll see if I can bring the vibes back up. Let me shout out a couple of other partners and we'll keep it rolling again. Keep those comments coming. I want to talk to you guys about Brunt Workwear. Brunt's best-selling Marin work boots are built not only for the toughest job sites, but they're completely waterproof. So if it's rainy, if it's muddy, standing water, your feet are going to stay dry. From oily workshop floors to muddy farm fields, everywhere in between, the Marin 6-inch soft toe is built for workers across a variety of trades. We've got a couple of pairs in the office, so we were able to check them out. They are very, very cool. I mean, kind of nice. You can wear them again on the job site, but you could also, just put them on with some jeans or a flannel or something like that. Would not look out of the ordinary or anything like that. Really sharp, really stylish. Eric Gerard grew up blue collar. He started Brunt Workwear because his friends in the trade told him that the big brands had stopped listening and they'd sold out to become fashion brands. Shots fired. With temps dropping and the holidays coming up, time to treat yourself or the hardworking man in your life to real comfort. Skip the throwaway gifts. Get him something built to last. Brunt Workwear. Our listeners get $10 off their entire order with the code DNVR at checkout. That's bruntworkwear.com. Use that code DNVR. Order today. Let them know you heard it here on the show. I also encourage you to choose chill, just like our friends at Coors Light do. Life is a lot at times. We've got the holiday season coming up. That's its own headache. Some of you might be traveling, dealing with an airport. Any time of the year is just the worst, but doing it around the holidays, I don't know. I'd rather watch paint dry. It's a brutal process. When you are juggling all that, I gotta sneeze. Oh, thank you. When you're juggling all that, it can be tough to keep a chill state of mind, and nobody wants to be around that guy. Do the little things. You know the drill at this point. Take your deep breaths, watch some Bob Ross videos, whatever you got to do. Choose chill. Then when you're chilling, crack open that ice cold Coors Light. It's cold lagered, it's cold filtered, it's cold packaged for a smooth finish. And when the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Beer. Okay. Kind of wrapping things up as far as what I'm hoping to see from DC on Saturday is just kind of growth from what we've seen to this point. Again, as far as decision making goes, the Rams have got to be better on third down, converting less than 30% in league play on third down. That is the worst in the league. You're going up against a Boise defense that has been susceptible to the run, although the Rams only averaging about 105 rushing yards per game in league play, so not exactly a strength, especially now that they've gotten dinged up in the interior and they're, Dupree's not in the mix anymore, although Avant can make some things happen for you, as can guys like Kennard and Justin Marshall certainly has home run hitting ability. It only takes one or two, big plays to potentially break this game open against a Boise State offense that has not been great, especially of late. I'd like to see DC use his legs some, but the main thing is he doesn't need to go out there and try and be Superman. Now, realistically, he's probably going to have to create a little bit. He's going to have to do something, but when you're trying to do too much, that's very quickly how you can get in a bad spot, especially when you don't have phenomenal help at the skill positions, and you are going up against a good secondary. If the Rams can run the ball with any type of consistency, that certainly would be a big asset. And at least as of late, Boise has, again, they have kind of struggled as a whole. I don't think it's been an issue for them this year, but they gave up 277 yards to San Diego State on the ground last week. Part of that was San Diego State basically abandoned the passing game when Denegal went down. The injuries across the board in the league, especially at the quarterback position, have been crazy. Really haven't seen anything like it from what I can remember, at least in my decade, covering the league now. But getting some type of ground game going, being able to build off of play action, maybe hit a vertical shot or two. You're going to definitely need some chunk plays because the Rams have just not shown the ability to drive up and down the field with any type of consistency this season. And based on the lack of depth, based on the injuries, based on the setting as well, who you're playing and where you're playing them, especially, I wouldn't go into this game anticipating that to change. To me, it feels like if you're going to have an opportunity to win this game, and I don't think it would be impossible to go in and win this game. I mean, Boise is human. You know, they've been the big bad bully in the Mountain West ever since they've been in the league. They've been picked to win the league every single year, and most of the time I've agreed with that. There've been a couple of times I felt like it's been lazy, but the gap between them and everybody else is not what it once was. And that's not me just saying that because Maddox Madsen's out now and they've struggled these last 2 weeks. I've been saying that now for 2-3 years because it's just not. They obviously had Ashton Gianti last year and he was incredible. But I mean, you looked elsewhere, receiver, secondary, it's just not what it once was, especially defensively. You know, it doesn't feel like they have the same type of, NFL caliber talent that they once did. They're beatable, and we've seen teams in the league pretty consistently compete with them these last couple of years. They're still certainly the standard. They're still certainly the best football program, year in and year out on paper. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that, but based on their struggles, I don't think this is a game that's. I was surprised to see the spread be as dramatic as it was. I guess I'll say that. I think I saw like 17 at one point. Boise scored 7 points in back-to-back weeks. I understand what the history is. I understand what CSU is. Not a very good football team. But Boise, they just don't have the juice that they once did. And me saying that now, they'll probably win by 4 scores just like they have the last 3 times because that's just what they do on the blue. It's a place where CSU, even the better teams, they've not played well there. There was a small stretch there with like McElwain in 2014 and Bobo's first time or two there where the games were closer. They were more on the competitive side of things. And the games in Fort Collins have actually been pretty back and forth, at least, the last 5 years or so. But it's not a place that CSU has had success. It's not a place I go into any matchup with any type of confidence in. And despite Boise's struggles, again, only 103 passing yards per game since Madsen went down, just 7 points in back-to-back weeks, just averaging 230 yards total over these last 2 weeks. They're still Boise. It's still the blue. Given CSU's spot, it's not an ideal scenario. They're starting a Max Cutforth, I believe a former walk-on from Idaho, a young kid. He's in a tough spot, a lot like what you could say about CSU. Their injuries in the trenches aren't as drastic, but they've had a weird spot with Chris Marshall at wide receiver. I don't know if he's suspended or hurt, or he was suspended at one point and then maybe got hurt. He's not going to play though. Either way, they've still got a really great trio of running backs though. Dylan Riley, Sire Gaines, Malik Sherrod, all 3 of those guys capable of being starters in their own right. They've combined for almost 1,700 yards and 17 rushing touchdowns this year. That's going to be one of the biggest keys for CSU. Can you slow those guys down, especially Dylan Riley, who's the best of the bunch? If you can stop the run, if you can make Boise one-dimensional, you're going to have some opportunities potentially to create a little bit of chaos, create some turnovers. You might have a shot. You never know. Now, if they're able to run for 5-6 yards a pop and just drive down the field on you, move the sticks with consistency, you're probably going to get gassed. And even if you hang around for a while, you do probably end up losing by, 3+ scores like you have the last couple of times. But if you can stop the run, if you can make a young and inexperienced quarterback prove that he can beat you, which he hasn't been able to at this point of his career, albeit against a really good defense in San Diego State last week, I think it at least gives you an opportunity. You have some opportunistic defensive players in Owen Long, who's obviously been great all year, Jace Bella, Lorich last week recovering 3 fumbles. That was crazy. I don't think you're going to force 5 fumbles like you did a week ago, but can you generate a little bit of chaos? Potentially. I mean, that was a big factor in Boise's loss to South Florida in week 1, which feels a million years away now, but they drove the ball with consistency. That wasn't the issue. They put the ball on the turf a couple of times. So, if you could do that, that would obviously be a big help to the cause. You're going to have to move the sticks better than you have at least over the last couple of weeks. If you're going to realistically have an opportunity to win this one, 29% on third down is just not going to get it done. And you can't turn the ball over, which is probably the biggest reason you lost that game last week. The defense did their part, but failing to capitalize on those fumbles and then having your own giveaways, it was a big equalizer. And I'm not saying that the game was all on DC or anything like that. He's been thrown into a horrible situation, and I've been open and upfront about that. But they've got to be better in the turnover margin to have any chance of beating Boise or Air Force this week. Who, I mean, when we looked at the schedule at the beginning of the year, you thought this was probably the toughest 2-game stretch of the entire season, going to Boise and then ending with Air Force at home, Troy Calhoun, who always has CSU's number. Neither of those teams are any good. Both of them still probably are going to end up beating CSU, but it's just been such a weird year for the league. It has not been a banner year for the conference in the last season with this iteration of the Mountain West. I know it'll live on, but it's kind of a bummer because there was a really fun stretch there where the parity was really good. I feel like the transfer portal burned the conference more so this past cycle or two, and you really felt that more this year. I don't know. It's been a bummer though. It has not been a great year for the Group of Five. I have some thoughts on that I might rant about at the end. You're seeing a lot of takes from voices in college football that are advocating for the Group of Five to be alienated even further and excluded from the playoff. And the irony is it's like the bussing with the boys, dude. Take the Luann and Will Compton. Compton's a Nebraska dude. Made a comment about teams in the ACC and Group of Five who get dummied in their own conference. You went to Nebraska, dude. Look in the mirror. Anyways, let's talk some hoops before we get out of here. The Rams 4-0 to start the year. Been a really encouraging start under Ali Farouk-Manesh. I really don't think you could have realistically asked for much more from this team at this point. I've loved the mindset. I've loved the unselfishness with which they play. I love how they share the basketball. I love their efficiency. I've talked about it a lot. I've seen some folks pointed out on Twitter as well. Jacob Children, I might be mispronouncing last name. I'm sorry if I am. I know he talked about that, how the Rams have basically abandoned the mid-range altogether. And that was something we heard from Ali after the first game or two, was that they really don't take any mid-range looks this year. Part of that is just based on who's on the roster. The last couple of years, you had Isaiah Stevens, who was incredibly efficient in the mid-range. And even, Neek had a lot of success with some of the stuff around the free throw line and stuff like that. Jalen Lake too, surprisingly, with like some of those floaters. Like they had some people who that was part of their bag. Now, that's not to say that we won't see any mid-range. Sometimes you're gonna have to create a shot, shot clock's winding down, something like that. But the Rams, for the most part, everything is coming at the hoop or it's a three-pointer. And we are seeing CSU shoot threes at a higher clip than we ever have before. I have questioned whether it's maybe a little bit too three-point happy at times. Is it going to be sustainable to hit this many shots all year long? Maybe it is. You've got a lot of good shooters. You're not dependent on just one or two guys, which actually makes me more inclined to believe that on any given night, you're going to have a couple of guys that are going to be able to get it going just because you have so many shooters. I mean, you trust in your starting lineup. Pasquarelli's a flamethrower. Rexsteiner has been great. He's been more efficient than he had at any point in his career. That's really exciting, especially early on in the process. Thought it might take him a little bit longer to find his flow in this offense. Hasn't at all. I love that. Jace Butler might have the best looking jump shot on the entire team. We're seeing Jorgensen shoot the ball. Augie, it's not really his game consistently, but he can stretch the floor a little bit for you. Kerry Booth shooting the ball with confidence. I mean, they've got a lot of guys right now that are putting it up confidently and hitting those shots with consistency. But does that continue to happen when you go against a more consistent defense? Now, I think they've played some teams that are potentially better than they maybe looked on paper initially. Cal Poly just beat Utah last night, so that win looks a little bit better than it maybe did when it happened initially. You want to see the Rams continue to do the things that they've done well this year. They've shared the basketball again. They've been efficient. They're rebounding at a really great rate defensively. It's a tad up and down at times, but I think the mentality is there, and I think especially when you get Bemba back, hopefully soon, we are going to see that team make a leap in that part of the game. I like where the Rams are trending from a metric standpoint. Currently 50th in KenPom. 3 teams in the Mountain West right now in the top 50 in KenPom. CSU's 50th, Utah State 44, San Diego State coming in at 36. The Rams now 16th in his offensive efficiency metric. Again, very, very impressive how quickly this team has been able to gel offensively, given how many newcomers you have playing substantial roles, and just the fact that, I mean, Rashawn Bemba coming into the year, if you had asked me in July, Justin, J Mike, whatever you want to call me, who is going to be the most important piece for CSU to be able to lean on in November in the non-conference slate to ensure that the Rams get off to a better start than they did last year? No doubt I would have said Bemba. They're 26-5 when he plays 15 or more minutes. I thought he played so well down the stretch last year. He had the perfect offseason, really took a leap in terms of his leadership role, has been more vocal, looks like he's been in great shape. And then, of course, the dude just has the worst luck. Gets hurt. But what that results in is a guy like Kyle Jorgensen stepping up. And now he has made a leap further than I would have anticipated. And I wasn't really intrigued by Jorgensen coming off of last year. I thought he showed a lot to work with. He's certainly highly skilled. I think what I liked the most about him last year was that he wasn't scared of the moment, got put into a bad spot, got baptized by fire a couple times on the defensive side, was never hesitant, though, to put up a big shot when they needed him to. And he hit some big shots and some key wins for CSU last year. What we're seeing from him this year, though, has just been incredible. He has been the most improved player in the league. Really, really, we've seen him elevate his game on both sides of the ball. And I think when you have both him and Bemba, the experience of those two to anchor you kind of in the front court, but also Kerry Booth, who certainly just athletically is on another level, and his defensive ceiling is higher than anybody on the team. I mean, him, Jace Butler, and McIver are definitely the highest ceiling guys defensively. I really like the possibility of that front court. I mean, that's not even including Nicola Japa, who's a guy who brings you a little bit of intensity and gives you kind of a rim protector presence in the paint that you maybe haven't had as consistently over the years. Still trying to stay out of foul trouble. He's the guy that gets 5 fouls, and he's going to use them if he's out there more than 10 minutes. But I don't mind that. I don't mind the way that Japa comes in. I think at times it's kind of a tone resetter for the Rams when he is out there. He just brings a little bit of attitude that, again, this team's been really skilled. I think they're a good group of guys, and that's been the case going back a half decade now. I think they've had a lot of high IQ basketball players who understand fundamentally what they're trying to accomplish within this system and are willing to sacrifice at times individual glory, because this system does just inherently, it incentivizes unselfishness, because you know you're going to get that ball back at some point. So you don't force things. You don't, dribble the air out of the basketball. You keep it moving because you know it's going to come back to you if you do. I love it. But I think that the Rams, this team, they've got some chippiness to them because they've got so many guys that have something to prove. And I really like that. I feel like it's kind of the perfect first class of transfers for a young coach in Ali Farouk-Manesh to be able to lean on guys who've played a decent amount of basketball, a lot of basketball in some instances. Munez is especially his guy, started over 90 games in his career. Pasquarelli's young, but he's played a lot. They've got guys that know what they're doing, and they've got young guys with really high ceilings who, if everything pans out, this team can be pretty dangerous. I mean, I love the direction Jace Butler is trending. His on-ball defense, especially along the perimeter, has been huge for this team. And I think we're going to see the Rams lean more and more on him and JoJo, who, again, I think he's only going to play more, especially as his game grows offensively. The fact that he can defend at such a high level, though, that's a bigger selling point than if he contributes offensively. I mean, that's basically just bonus Jonas. That's having your cake and eating it too if you get anything from him offensively this year. And he's already shown the ability to facilitate. I think he's got a good looking shot. I think he can get to the rim. He's a good athlete. He's a guy who, as he grows, it's all going to come together, and he's going to be a really, really talented basketball player, really, really good hooper at this level. But him and Butler are young. They need reps. They need minutes out there, and as they get them, I think the rotation is as deep as it's ever been. I think we're going to see Augie be more and more of an element offensively. I just think his ability to post up and play with his back to the basket is something that not everybody on this team can do, and I do think that's going to be valuable for him. What can guys like him and Jorgensen do for you in the post in a game where maybe the threes aren't falling? We haven't had to see CSU battle through that type of game yet, but it's going to happen probably a couple times this year where whether they're good looks or not, just for whatever reason, they're not falling. How do you adjust? Can you get to the hoop? They've done a pretty good job of getting to the free throw line. And again, because when they're not looking for threes, they are trying to get to the rim traditionally. Like, I don't panic about that possibility. I just want to see what happens because we haven't been in that spot yet. I love everything about what is happening with this team right now. Now you've got to be able to sustain it, and you've got to avoid landmine losses like you had last year against UC Riverside. You don't want to overlook a team like DU who's not good. I mean, Ken Palm, I think, had CSU winning it by 22 or something like that. They're 1-3 coming in, but in the Pios' defense, they're a young team. And on top of that, their schedule has not been exactly the easiest. I think they opened at Washington and Seattle, two good programs, two tough true road settings. And then after this, they go to the U of A and Wyoming. So a brutal introduction to the season for the Pios, but an opportunity, I would say, for the Rams here to continue to refine their game, continue to try and grow on what they've done well. This isn't a preseason game. They all count, but this is kind of the last tune-up, if you will, before next week, where the games that are really going to dictate the direction of your season are now here. We've got the MCE next week. It's a winnable game against Virginia Tech. Maybe a Brandon Recksteiner revenge performance. That'd be a fun storyline. As a writer, I'm all for that. I might get a chance to play St. Mary's potentially. I mean, you've got an opportunity here between those games and then with CU coming to Moby on the 6th to get a little bit of meat on them bones. You're going to need a little bit of weight on that non-conference resume to realistically be in the conversation for an at-large bid, unless you're just going to do something historic and rip off a crazy run in the Mountain West. But, the Mountain West might not be quite as good as it's been the last couple of years, so those metrics might not be looking quite as good as they had been. You just want to leave as much ambiguity out of the conversation as possible come Selection Sunday, and you do that by taking care of business in the MTE, by beating a team like CU on your home floor, by avoiding landmine losses, and then going into the league slate, roaring. And it's going to be tough. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. Don't ever sneeze. Did it twice on the show today. But this team is in a really good spot. They put themselves in a great position kind of going into the holiday season here. I think it's kind of the perfect scenario. You've got guys that are hungry. You've got a lot of minutes to give out as well. It would be tough if you had this many key transfers, but you also kind of had the established veterans that you've had on the roster these last couple of years, guys like Jalen Lake and Isaiah and Neek, because they were guaranteed to play, at least 30 minutes. With Isaiah and Neek, it's probably more like 35 plus. You don't have anybody on the team that you probably even want to play that much, to be honest. One, for sustainability, but two, because the depth of this roster is its greatest asset. Now, that's going to be challenging to keep everybody in line, to get everybody to buy into their sacrifice being worth it, because it leads to team success. I think they've got good guys, but it's human, especially as the season goes on, the rotation starts to get reduced. Guys start looking around if they're not playing the type of role that they feel they're capable of, and they start, hanging their heads a little bit. How does CSU deal with that? That's still to be determined. Just the human nature element of dealing with a basketball rotation. That's always going to be the case, but especially so when you've got realistically 10 to 12 guys who could play key minutes for you, and you'd be okay with that. That there were always going to be 1 to 2, really more like 2 to 3, if not even 4 odd men out, guys that are capable of playing a bigger role, but just aren't, because there are so many guys that are capable, and it's really an embarrassment of riches for Ali to work with, considering the fact that it's year one. You watch Nico go out the door. You saw Cayenne go to North Carolina. I know somebody in the Toyota chat, I think it was our guy Taylor, asked for an update on some of the old guys, and we could do that. Moving forward, I can give an update on Cayenne and Croc and all the transfer departures for sure. But to be able to hit the ground running like this, the way that the Rams have, after losing so many key pieces, after seeing Neat go to the NBA, after losing Jalen Lake, and seeing two of your most appealing players from the rotation last year hit the portal, it's been really impressive. And I tip my cap to this team. I hope they continue to trust the process. Don't shake a bunch of things up now that you're winning, or try and do too much all of a sudden. You're sharing the ball so well. Just continue to do that. You're going to get your looks if you share the ball. And then can you, again, just kind of finish strong here in the non-conference slate before a challenging start in Mountain West play coming out of the Christmas break there. Before we get out of here, I wanted to give an updated Mountain West basketball power ranking. CSU climbing the ladder, baby. We've been in the doghouse on the football side, so we gotta get these moments of pride in when we can. Right? Like, if you can't enjoy this is what it's all about. Starting at the bottom, Air Force, going to be tough for them to climb out of that top spot, or out of that bottom spot. Yeah, just tough. I've got Fresno at 11, although I really considered putting them a little bit higher. If you're going just based off wins and losses, they should be higher in this. But again, this isn't standings. This is both an encapsulation of what I feel like your ceiling is / the direction you're trending. And honestly, it's just kind of my personal temperature check on all these teams. You can look at the standings if all you want is wins and losses. Everybody's played a varying level of competition at this point. Just straight record isn't necessarily indicative of how good a team is or what they're going to be this season. San Jose State, I've got at 10. I think their ceiling's higher than Fresno. Fresno's had a better start. That's where I'm at with them. Nevada at 9, probably been the most underwhelming team out of any of the squads you would have had any type of realistic expectations for. GCU, underwhelming as well. They're down to 8. I had them top 3 in the preseason. Have not been the team I anticipated. Wyoming, probably the most improved team in the league so far. Playing solid. I've got them at 7, but again, you could make an argument they should be higher. Probably would have had them higher if they didn't blow their most recent game. New Mexico at 6. They have dropped 2 straight. I've got UNLV at 5. They're the most hot and cold team in the league. I really don't know what to make of that program. They'll lose a game to like a team ranked in the 300s in metrics, and then they'll go on the road and beat Memphis, because that's what UNLV does. And I'm so over that roller coaster experience. They'll probably be a thorn in the side of whoever ends up truly contending in the league is this year, because that's just what they do. They'll go like, I don't know, 12-8 in conference play, but beat San Diego State and Utah State and CSU or something dumb like that. I mean, I've come to expect it with them. Boise up to 4. They've done a nice job, 4 straight wins since that embarrassing D2 loss. I've got San Diego State at 3. They lost to Troy in triple OT the other night. Troy, though, actually should have beat USC as well, so maybe not necessarily a bad loss, but the type of game you've got to win at home. they've had bad injury luck, but they have not looked as formidable as you maybe would have hoped or expected coming in. I have CSU 2, Utah State 1. Now, I'm only giving it to Utah State because I think their win over VCU is more impressive than anything on CSU's resume at this point. But I think that the Rams are for real, and I think both CSU and Utah State are very firmly in the conversation to be an at-large team this year. Boise might be as well by the time it's all said and done. Probably not going to be a 4+ bid league like we've seen it be at times these last couple of years, but I still think it is a multi-bid basketball conference. That's our updated power ranking. I'll be interested to hear what the thoughts are. But yeah, as Taylor says in the Toyota chat, for all those who are getting snarky about the future Pac-12, the current power ranking, especially on the hoop side, and now you throw Gonzaga in there as well. What side of the street are they going to be on? That's all I've got for you guys tonight. I was going to rant about people keeping the G5 out of, or trying to, keep the G5 out of the playoff. I don't have the energy for it. Those people don't truly love college football. They'll be severely disappointed when they successfully kill everything that makes this sport magical for a discount version of the NFL that won't consistently live up to the product, that won't give you the league that you're desiring to create while abandoning everything that makes college football fun in the first place, and to the voices in the league who are advocating for it. I hope that you feel the brunt of that at some point down the line, because the media shills that are talking heads for all of the networks and just, let's push the G5 out. Like, it just makes me sick. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Much love, y'all. We are always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.